Hi guys, Keith Darkberg Farms. It is now getting to be the end of March, coming up on market season. So, been really wanting to build something like this for quite some time. So let me show you. But first, just a reminder, we do a third Thursday Q&A every third Thursday of the month, 5 p.m. Central. Come with your questions. Also, we've got argenbergfarms.com. Scroll down the bottom, bunch of cool stuff, digital tools and training. We've got our sidewall opener kits available now. And then finally, we got the membership portion of the channel open up. Go down to the bottom, check it out. It's in the page description, and go ahead and join the farm. So I've really been wanting to build something like this for years for the farm stand. Mainly just for the ease of setup. I can just pick the whole darn thing up, well, my wife can, and put it on the table, and we're good to go. It's actually half the table wide. I'm going to build a second one of these. That's one I'm going to show you. But the compartments, about 16 wide, 16 tall, and about 16 deep. I had to modify that just a little bit to fit in our market trailer, which is, you can't see it back there, but it only has a limited height on it, so I can only fit something so high in there. So this will fit nicely. Doing it in two components because this darn thing gets heavy. Not my initial idea. I actually got this from Carrie down in Oklahoma. She's a great market gardener, had a beautiful setup like this. She actually had this up on a stand, so these actually set at 6 foot tall. I think I might build a base for underneath it because right now, I'm taller, but it's still only up to here. I really like this top one to be at eye level, and that's the primo view. So that's something I'll have to do later, but for now, we'll go ahead and start and build it. So here's my stock. They're just 6-inch fence pickets. They are red cedar, really nice actually, but they have a really, really rough texture on them. So that I've got to sand off. So here's my original plans. So both cases, 70 inches, about 35 wide, 29 tall to fit the trailer. Here's all the breakdowns minus the thickness of the material, which is about a ½ inch. And here's my tools. Pretty simple. I got a table saw, a chop saw, miter saw, whatever you want to call it, with a very fancy switch on it because I replaced that about 15 years ago. And a belt sander that is all but falling apart, but has a brand new belt on it. So that'll be fun. So with my pretty simple setup, as you can see, it just grabbed and pulled that one right out of my hand. You do have to be careful. I'm basically just planing off all the fuzziness off these fence pickets. They come pretty darn rough, which you'll see here in a second. But what I'm doing is I'm gonna have to run them each across there 4 times because they're 6-inch wide and I only have a 4-inch belt on my belt sander. I'm not aiming for a perfectly smooth board on this. What I'm really just trying to do is just to really knock the fuzz off it more than anything. Pretty simple here. I'm only going to run a couple here and show you. I'm just taking it across my belt sander and getting them smoother. I still want to have the rustic look on this cabinet when I'm done, so I don't want them perfectly smooth. I want a little bit of that, more rustic look. So here you can see what it looks like when it starts and finish. So I went from basically real rough to real smooth. Next, we're just working across the table saw here. Very cheap table saw I have. I believe all this stuff came from the Chinese tool store. There's nothing fancy, but I'm just taking one blade off of the sides of each of these, and all I'm trying to do here is to re-square and take the fuzz off the board. I'm not working for anything finished cut at this time. More or less, I just need something smooth to run back across the fence. Now, I am going to rip these down to about 5 inches. So that's what I'm aiming for my finished slats all the way around the case. So right now I'm ripping off about 1 inch. The drop cut I'll actually use as glue blocks here later, and they'll actually help me build the rest of the case. So I'm just taking off that 1 inch, taking down to 5 inches. It'll give me about an overall depth of about 16 inches when I'm done, with about 3/8 of an inch space. I believe that's my last one there, and I'm readjusting now for the back. The back ended up being 5 3/8 inch pickets, and I just need to run a couple of those. So there's all my little pieces. I'll turn into glue blocks later. I just cut those down to the actual depth of the case. It gives me a good spacer here later. Now I did set some boards on the bench next to me, and that was specifically so I have something to hold up the end of the planks as I'm cutting them. I'm actually taking these 3 at a time because each piece of this case takes 3 pickets coming out. So 5 3, 15 plus the 3/8 gives me about 16 inches. So I'm doing that to basically cut the end square. From there, I rip it down, and then I just take them down to size. I mean, I'm just cross-cutting on my, again, cheap miter saw. As nice as a sliding miter, because they're a little bit wider. I could probably do this with a regular one. Again, this setup is not fancy. I mean, this is the bare bones, but you know what? It works. I've been working with this stuff for a long time. I actually built a house with this, a porch, many decks, and many other projects with just this simple setup. I've also used the table saw for ripping and gluing stock together. It seems to work just fine. You know, again, it could be fancier, but it is what it is. Now I have all the measurements already known and planned out beforehand, so I'm able just to run and cut and stack up and go and just repeat. So these are the rest of the fence pieces, and now these are the actual pieces for the back. I've got them all cut, stacked up, and we're ready to go off to build. So there are my blocks right there. Those are glue blocks. Those were all the little 1-inch cutoffs. I actually ripped them down to about 3/4. Come to length, and that's actually my spacer for the depth of the cabinet. So I'm just squaring and lining up all these. I'm going to go through and glue and pin nail. I'm just using a little cheap pin nailer. My good pin nailer actually blew up halfway through the first case I built. So I had to go to the cheap Chinese tool store and get another one real quick because I couldn't see myself paying that much for a pin nailer when it had one part that I can easily replace. Now, as you can see, that one I just made does not look like the one I'm just making. Those are actually the sides of the case. We'll get to that here in a second, but basically I'm just gluing blocks top and bottom so I can put a shelf on the bottom and on the top of the case. Doing that so I have a little bit of space underneath the case so it'll sit more evenly on the table. I have less surface area touching the table, less to worry about. Now for the center shelf, I just measured down from the top, used my square, pinned it, and magic. Both sides now look the same. I actually glued actually used the bottom planks, which are on the bottom now, to make the side originally because I was not paying well enough attention while I was going. I was trying to get production going and get moving, and it happens. I tore it back apart and just put the glue side down so no one will ever see my mistake. Now on this, I actually glued the bottom whenever I do any of these shelves, and I glued the side so I had glue on both the bottom and the end grain. The piece on the top I held up there just to kind of keep it square as I was building. But basically all my measurements now are coming from what I cut beforehand. So I'm just lining up outsides. I'm eyeballing the spaces in between and just going with it. Now I'm just working on squaring the case. The blocks help me do that. And then I square all 4 corners because all of this stuff is actually not straight because they're fence pickets. Now, let's face it, they are not straight and they're not meant to be straight. But I'm actually using them now to bring everything, at least in the back of the case, back square again. That's why I work one way and work across, is because I just line it up with the bottom. And as I move it in or out to make it line up with the top or bottom. Glue again, and then I just eyeball in between all these, shoot them into place, and we're good to go. Looks really good. We're going to flip it over, and now I have to make the middle divider, the upright. Again, using my little blocks for spacers, I actually shot one on the top, just temporary to hold everything together while I shot the middle bracket on. So I actually forgot to do the other side of this, but I'll get back to that here in a second. Bring the case back, and then I'm using my actual middle shelf brackets as my spacers now to apply glue, and I will again use them to push the middle divider into place. I'm just bringing it right over to them, and I'm shooting through the bottom and top of the case to hold this into place. And as I go, I'm just using that same board as my spacer. I know that'll be right and it'll work great because they are what goes in the middle. So if everything was cut properly to begin with, everything should go together just fine, and there should not be any issues with building this thing out. So I did forget to put that other glue block in there, which I shot real quick, and then I had a little bit of blowout there, so I had to glue that back on. You won't even be able to see it when it's a finished project. So now I'm just shooting a little bit shorter pins now because I don't want them to go through the bottom of the glue block and show later. I mean, we are going to have produce in here. People are going to be reaching in here, so I don't want them to snag their hands or get cut or poked or anything like that. So I'm just shooting in the last shelf, and it's pretty simple at this point. I mean, we are almost done with the project. The whole thing took about an hour to actually build, a lot quicker in this amount of time. I went through and shot the back with the center divider just to keep those planks from moving the other direction. And there we go. Pretty simple. And here's the final product. I actually made two of these. So I have section 1 and section 2. I believe this is one I actually built while we were making it. I did cut some holes back here on the sides to make it easier to pick up. Basically drilled 2 holes and then connected them together so I had a handhold that I could actually grab and pick up. I am going to do a light sanding on these to kind of knock over the corners, so it's a little bit easier on the hand, a little bit nicer. Not worried about the extra little bit of fuzz on here. What I have is actually a clear coat lacquer I'm going to put on this, and it's a matte and like a really thick, I can't remember what it's called, but it's supposed to be like a 3-coat thing. So we're going to get 1 coat on there, get everything filled in, because this has to be somewhat food safe because there is going to be produce in it, and I don't want it to stain. So it'll fill all the pores, all the holes, and I'll do a light sanding, and I'll probably put another coat, maybe 2. Just kind of depends on how much it's actually really like going into this. A lot of stuff soaks up a lot when it's fresh and untreated wood like this. So we'll see. I mean, this is basically going to be a very nice market setup. I'll have a tablecloth here. I might actually build a stand so they're up about that much higher, because I'm actually down on my knees right now. And when I look at them, they top out right about here, and I want the produce more up towards eye level and really promote the stuff up on top and make that the real selling points. It's what they do in the grocery stores. I didn't make this up. Advertising marketers did. So I'm kind of going off that. But I've got a really nice stock look where I can pile this thing full of carrots, and like this one down here full of radishes. So I got a nice red, pink, and orange up here, and I can put my bag mixes here and like big bag mixes here. And you know what, bags of potatoes, you know, whatever, beets, and just really show off the produce really well. Again, there'll be a really nice tablecloth down here to hide the ugly white table. And also a darker color will contrast with the produce and really set it off. So as always, hope y'all like what you saw today. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank y'all. Have a good day. And here are the beauty shots. Big 16 by 16 by 16 inch deep cabinets. Really nice. Hold a lot of produce. Again, we're below shoulder height here. I'd prefer to be up here, so we're going to put a base underneath it. Here's a nice little shot of the handholds I cut in the back there. Be really nice for actually picking it up. Just drilled 2 holes. See it over here as well, and then cut in between them. And yeah, I'm really happy with the way it came out. Really happy with the looks of it. I'm going to finish it with a matte, so it should stay about the same. It'll just add a little bit of luster to it. All in all, I am super excited about taking this out to the farmer's market.